second thing, I watched John Oliver on homelessness the other day. We've mentioned this, but I was struck by it. I feel like so many of the conversations about homelessness are just people talking about two different cohorts.
Yeah,
So like,
sure.
he just grabs, this family who was paycheck to paycheck, and then the mom got laid off, and now they're living in their car, and just repeatedly, this is the face of homelessness. This is the face of homelessness. I was like, and we shouldn't treat it with these particular by criminalizing it or this sort of thing. And I'm like, yes, in this particular thing, where I live,
the homeless are not a monolith. Not every homeless person has the same story. Not every homeless person has the same likelihood of committing a violent crime. It's, of course, you can't brush the entire homeless population with one brush.
Yes, and what I thought was it's an important piece of the conversation to have. But yeah, it almost, we just need to split this into several different conversations and stop calling it homelessness, because he was pushing against the mental health crisis narrative of homelessness, which is not the entirety of it. In the loudest in the area where I lived in Santa Monica, firsthand, it's a drug mental health issue. Now, there certainly are people that do not fit that bill, and I'm only talking about dozens or hundreds of people, certainly not the entire scope of it. But firsthand, that is a cohort to which people are referring when they speak about homelessness and when they propose solutions and when they talked about the intractability of the problem. So he concludes with...
Well, yeah, it's kind of like treating it's like, the unemployed are all people that couldn't do their jobs. It would be a ridiculous statement. But also to say the unemployed are all people who were excellent at their jobs and laid off for no reason is also stupid. Like, some people are unemployed because they were not able to hold down jobs, and others are unemployed because of a series of tragedies that, if given another chance, they would be able to excel in a corporate environment. Like, yeah, is he proposing that all homeless people are the same?
Well, no, and I don't want to say that he was. I think he tilted towards no, he definitely wasn't. But there was one quote that I had, which was, you have to ask yourself, because he's talking about how increasingly homeless activities like being in certain public areas are being criminalized in a lot of cities, and says you have to ask yourself if the rise in crime in homeless people is just from them sitting down. And I can tell you maybe some of it is, but not where I lived. Like, where I lived, it was because they broke into our building on several occasions, stole stuff, busted in the apartment, and committed crimes.
Yeah, it's just anecdotes. It's absolutely but an end of one. But yeah, we had homeless people who broke into our building, tried to rob people, broke into cars, threatened people with weapons.
And so the point is, I found myself just saying yes, both. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
they
often,
both exist.
Yes. And the question of course is to which proportion, in which area, and that the solution that works for a particular cohort might be ineffective for another cohort of people. And rather than arguing whether it is a mental health crisis or it is his solution, which maybe works for a lot of people, is like just provide them with homes and the problem is solved. It seems clear to me that it is neither of those across the board. And I guess that's not as interesting of a conversation to have, and it doesn't lend itself as easily to solutions. But yeah, the line that they has in that segment was, house keys are the only thing that ends homelessness. And yeah, given my just experience there, I was like, that is not going to take care of what the people in the neighborhood that I used to live in were talking about. Like, house keys would very likely not do it. Maybe it would. Maybe that would solve all the problems. But yeah, I just found myself saying yes, both. I also watched some of Jon Stewart he's got the thing on Apple TV where he talks about the economy. And I know it's trite to say, but I feel like liberals and conservatives just touch different parts of the elephant and then insist that they're right all the time.
Yeah.
And then they just get all of these images of their parts of the elephant. This is the hard back leg, and the way that this is a muscle. And somebody's grabbing the trunk. It's like, no, this is soft and tender.
Of course, you saw that. During the BLM protests was the strongest case I've ever seen of that, where if you turned on one news station would just have a bunch of police beating up just civilians in a horrible fashion that clearly was like a way overkill, beating up people in wheelchairs. You know what I mean? And then the other would have people flipping cop cars, Molotov cocktailing them, running around with machetes. And both of these things were happening across the country, and it was very rare to see someone that had the two images next to each other. You would get 6 of one from one news station, 6 of the other from the other, and most people are just living in rural or suburban areas. They're not even close to a real one. They didn't see a BLM protest with their eyes, and so whatever station they tune into, is they just go, oh my God, all of the protests look exactly like this. It's all police beating up people in wheelchairs. So like, oh my God, it's just a bunch of people Molotov cocktailing cop cars. It's like, whatever narrative you want is what part of the elephant you show people.
Mm-hmm. There was I watched a little bit of, there's the YouTube channel Modern Wisdom. I don't know the guy's name. He does interviews with people. He had David Pakman on, and he at one point said, the BLM riots or this. And Pakman says, I think it's really interesting you refer to it as the BLM riots. I've never heard of it like that except on conspiracy channels. When I think of riots, I think of January 6th. And as if that was a sufficient point that he had never heard of it that way. And I was like, dude, you just nailed it. Like, 2 totally different worldviews by people that were not present in Washington, D.C. necessarily at the Capitol building, nor were they at the BLM overwhelmingly peaceful or the violent parts of the riots, certain that anything that contradicts what they have heard the most from their echo chamber is a conspiracy. It's like, that is the interesting conversation to have, which is, how are you is there a principle? This was what was sort of frustrating me with the riots / protests was, by what principle does something get called a riot? If like the overwhelmingly peaceful, it was like 99% of this was peaceful. It's like, okay, if we apply that to the amount of people at the January 6th thing, and we take all of the people that showed up and all of the people that committed a crime, and it is 99% of the people didn't commit a crime, does that count now as overwhelmingly peaceful? And we've said this in so many different ways, but of course not. There's nobody's interested in few people, I should say, are interested in the application of principles evenly to their pet projects and their.
I'm pretty confident that one of them probably was more violent per capita than the other, but I've never seen anybody run any sort of analysis to figure out which. So,
and of course, not all violence is created equal, right? There's different kinds of violence. So like, you might somebody stealing property versus somebody murdering someone versus somebody breaking and entering. Like, these are not all the same exact types of things. Somebody issuing a death threat versus doing it. But yeah, it was just I turned off the interview after that. I was like, it's just going to be partisan for the rest of the thing. We're not going to have the interesting conversation about why are you so certain that the other side is a conspiracy and that your side isn't. Yeah. And you just said it because you've never heard it before. That's how we deem what a conspiracy is. Something that I haven't heard often except from the people that I dislike. And I mentioned this too, I won't go too deep, but I listened to another podcast, Jordan Peterson, I guess it was on Michaela Peterson's podcast, talking to a woman who was an SJW by her own sort of definition and hated Jordan Peterson and described it, why she hated him. She's like, I listened to 30 seconds of you and I didn't like the thing you said, and I'd heard about you several times before. And so I was just like, never again will I let that person enter into my brain. So yeah, that's a handful of the things that I've got. I've got one or two more, but what do you got?
I have a bunch of stuff. First, shout out to our unofficial sponsor for this, Mint.com. They aren't paying me to say this, but today Mint.com made me aware that someone stole my credit card. So I wanted to shout it out. I'm not getting paid for this, but everyone should sign up because I got an email. It's like, hey, you have a fee for this withdrawal. And I said, that didn't happen. And it turns out in the last 3 days, someone stole my credit card, physically stole a credit card, and has just been banging it for $1,000 of gas, liquor stores,
and this happened at our last place where we lived, where mail
it was a credit card
constantly stolen because people would break in the building and grab stuff.
Yeah, it was a credit card I was waiting to get mailed, and I never received it. So I know that's weird, but it's COVID, and the mail's all been struggling. So I guess it got lost in the ether. Someone found it, and so Mint.com is the only reason that I know that somebody was using my credit card. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, and this is a card just like that we weren't looking at. It was for the Dungeons and Dragons podcast. It's like we put money in there and haven't looked at it. We're not
I never got it. I never would have checked because I just thought that it got lost in the mail. Yeah. And USPS has been struggling with COVID and labor shortages, and it just was never going to make it to me. So it didn't occur to me to check that someone else had gotten it and was banging it Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah. Well, hope they enjoyed themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. Spent $1,000 over the last 3 days. I think they're having a great time.
Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.